Hello and welcome. This is Morrigan, my 2021 Mongoose Dolomite ALX. It's obviously a fat bike, but what is not obvious is that it's an aluminum frame. I mention that because this is not my first Dolomite, that having been a 2019 steel Mongoose Dolomite. Now that bike was heavy but fun, and for $279 at the time, it was an incredible bargain. Now I got the Dolomite ALX for $498 delivered in March of 21. I liked that first Dolomite so much that I bought the sequel basically, or Dolomite 2.0 as I call it. I got the 18-inch medium framed unit. It's got a standover height of 270 millimeters at the bottom bracket, which is more than enough for my 32-inch inseam, and oddly, that's the same as the handlebar width. Now, there are three things that I love about this bike, and one thing that I'm not entirely thrilled with. First, I'm gonna say it, I love the way this bike looks. I really like red bikes for the most part, because red is my favorite color. But this matte silver with black trim and a black fork has kind of a elegant, understated appearance. Or at least as elegant as a fat bike can be. But I guess it's not a surprise that I love the way it looks. I say this about every bike that I make this kind of a video about. But the reality of it is, I'm not gonna buy a bike that I don't like the looks of. Secondly, this bike is really well equipped for $500. It's got an aluminum frame and fork, as I said, with really nice welds throughout. It's got a 2x crankset with 170 millimeter cranks and a set of 22 and 36 tooth chain rings. It's got a sealed square taper bottom bracket. Tires are 26-inch by 4-inch Aerosun Big Fatty 26. Now, don't blame me, I did not name them. It had stock cable actuated disc brakes, 180 front and 160 rear. 270 millimeter aluminum handlebar, as I mentioned, with an unlabeled 85 millimeter stem, and the brake levers are all alloy, no plastic involved. The drivetrain is Microshift with 2x8 trigger shifters, operating an M26 rear derailleur and an FD M426 front derailleur with an 11 to 34 tooth Sunrace cassette. And finally, the Mongoose MGN saddle is nicely padded, so I've kept it, and I tend to appreciate those things a bit more as I continue to age, be that as it may. Third, I absolutely love the way this bike rides. And in fact, while it sees most of its use during the winter, probably not a big surprise, I do ride this bike year-round, and I have a lot of fun doing so. You would think that perhaps the rigid fork is a limiting factor, but you take the low-pressure, high-volume tires into account, it's really quite comfortable. I run them at about 5 or 6 psi in warm weather and a little bit lower in the winter, and that takes out the worst of the impact from roots and rocks and potholes and such. Again, makes it a really comfortable ride. And these big tires also make it roll real easily over pretty much any obstacle you throw at it. Kind of like a monster truck rolling over a Yugo. Another thing about those tires is that the rolling mass makes handling, well, interesting. You feel the wheels pulling against the turn and resisting as you steer due to the built-in gyroscopic effect. But you know, that's not a bad thing. In fact, the bike is so spectacularly stable that it may well be the bike in my stable that I am the most confident riding. Not once in all the time I've ridden it have I ever felt like I was about to go out of control on this bike. Now, as much as I love this bike, I gotta say, it's not perfect. If there were one thing I would change on the Dolomite ALX, it would have to be, I'd like to make it lighter. In stock form, it's a 36-pound bike. Okay, that's not horrible, but it could be better. And I'm not willing to give up my dropper post, so the best bet for weight reduction apparently would be to go tubeless. Now that would require purchase of a compressor and the kit and all that, but that's not insurmountable. And this would eliminate 700 grams per wheel, or a total of just under 3.1 pounds. Alternately, I noticed that Surly has a lightweight inner tube for under $20, coming in at 310 grams each. And that is still a decent reduction and wouldn't require the purchase of a compressor. And I guess, if weight of the bike is the only complaint that I have, well, it's not a deal breaker really. With the 22-tooth small chainring, climbing isn't actually that much of a burden. Now, I have made a few upgrades, not many, but a few. I added a 45mm wake stem to give me a more upright riding posture. Cheap Zoom brakes, which frankly turned out to be a lot better than I anticipated, and they're still working well after several years and 2 bikes. I added a set of my current favorite grips, Oury's, and a set of Rockbros alloy flat pedals, frankly because they match the color scheme of the bike. And I added a KS dropper seat post. At the moment, I have no plans to alter the drivetrain. As I said, that 22-tooth small chainring is great for climbing, and the 36-tooth ring is good for flats and, like logging roads and such. On balance, this is a really great bike for just under $500, or just under $600 in late 2020. I honestly cannot imagine how I could possibly have any more fun on a fat bike costing 3 or 4 times what this bike did than I do on this bike. And at the end of the day, I ride because it's fun. And Morrigan is the epitome of fat bike fun for me. Now, if you want to learn more about the Dolomite ALX, I have linked to a playlist lower left, and there's a link to another video lower right that I think you will probably enjoy. And as always, seriously, thanks so much for watching. I really do appreciate that. Goodbye and have a wonderful day.